Let's have a political conversation now, and we're joined by a politician who's a lawyer, and his name is Dr. Duncan Ojwang, and he's in the studio. Dr. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
The non-politician.
Buana.
Yes. Let's just not lie.
Did you at any one time vie for political office?
I've vied to be a prefect.
That's political office. You are a politician. Very good. You are a politician. Karibu sana.
Asante, and nice seeing you this festive season. I see that you are gearing towards that season. Eh?
We're not gearing. We are inside. We are already there. We finished gearing a long time ago.
Wow.
We are in the festive season. Karibu sana. City. Then also let's take him to that place down south.
Brother, I want to take you to the kingdom of Lesotho.
Lesotho.
I want to tell you about a proverb from that particular. It is called the country in the sky. Okay? The kingdom in the sky. You know why? It's mountainous.
Oh.
So the country is actually elevated. It's raised. The proverb. Houses built close together burn together.
So they don't like group thinking.
No. Group thinking isn't the problem here.
Ah.
It's the outcomes of group thinking.
The outcome of
Yes, especially the adverse variety of outcomes.
For some of us, I prefer to think as an individual but act as a group.
Explain what you mean.
You know, there are people who think as a group and act as a group. Yeah? You think as a group and act as a group. There are others who think as individual but act as a group. Then there are others who think as individual and act as individual. My preference is to think as an individual but always try to act as a group. Worse is thinking as a group and then acting as a group, because when you think as a group, there are some components of individuality, of looking at things from different perspectives that is missing. And that sometimes is the problem down there in the south. They could have thought as acted as a group, but thought as individual. Maybe there could have been diversity.
That's profound.
The juice is kicking in.
You think as an individual, you act as a group.
Yes.
That means that you have to convince yourself, and then you convince others.
Right. But if you think as a group, which it's mob psychology or group think, it's usually one person thinking for everyone. It has its limitation, and things don't get well. The discourse become stopped.
I have a problem with this phrase, group thinking and herd mentality.
Group think, yeah.
I have. Why I have a problem is, are we saying that all the individuals who are in that particular mob or crowd at some point have converged their thinking and it is similar, or is it their reaction? Or are you going to say that the reaction is a product of the thinking?
The sociologists will tell you that a group loses their individuality. That is why you can find a crowd that in a crowd you can do things you cannot do if you are by yourself, because you have surrendered your thinking. In fact, the way to intervene when somebody is acting crazy because they are in crowd is to call them by their individual name, Duncan. Then it's like awakening them. They're like, oh. So there is something real about group thinking or mob psychology, that there is now no individual thinking or thinking at all. Then it might be that one person thinking, 100 people, but one person thinking for them. And that becomes very dangerous, easily. So here you have float of a crowd acting without inputting their brain into the action.
Let's talk politics, Duncan. We'll start with the politics of the country, and then we look at how that also relates to the politics of the region, right? Africa's geopolitical future, shifts and alliances. Let's just start from home. Our politics in this country seems to be shifting on a daily basis, Duncan. And, today the direction appears to be this, and then the next time the direction appears to be different, and so on and so forth. Is that so, or is it just a small group of people who keep shifting and they appear to be representing the thinking of the nation?
I think there is multiple conversation going on at the same time. But remember the famous say of waiting for the hyena waiting for the hand to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
These days the hand don't fall off. It reattaches. So you have to bite it off. Just looking and predicting that so-and-so will be here, will be opposed to so-and-so, and I don't need to do anything. I just need to align and wait. Looks like it's not working. People are more proactive. The hegemons or the actors are more proactive, and it goes to those who are proactive. So if someone had predicted, and let's preempt it, if you predicted that because former president is out there, is probably enemy to person X, and therefore if I align, I'm going to join that already waiting bus, then you find that that is waiting for the hand to fall off. You have to be proactive than that, go and bite that hand off, negotiate with that hand. So things are not settled. Things are not settled, but there is some organization in this madness towards new alliances, expanded alliances. I'm seeing a situation where, for the first time, maybe we can see Rift Valley, Nyanza, Mount Kenya working together. Wouldn't that be a good thing?
Was it a bad thing? Was it a bad thing?
No, it will be to redo it. I'm saying it has not been as such for a while, so that when you find those alliances, you find one is either out, right? One is either out, two have, the duet have worked almost against or have defeated. But now having them work together, of course not perfectly, but to a bigger extent or to a larger part of the population, that will be the innovation of this season.
Does that then not assume that because leaders whose leadership is attached to these regions seem to have come to a commonality of understanding, we therefore assume that those who fall into the brigades of people who would follow these leaders would automatically see the need of working together?
Yeah, I'm making an assumption, and probably, in my view, I don't struggle with that assumption, because I think it is the right assumption. There is no leaders without followers.
It is very true.
And there is no followers without leader. Therefore, if you have mentioned the leaders, then usually, from what we have in data, broad data, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Knowledge is data. Our data is showing that they have generally, more or else, followed the leaders. Those that
they have.
Yeah.
You see, why I've taken that trajectory of discussion is the following has to do, again, with another assumption. And the assumption is some benefit will accrue to you, the follower. Your life will change for the better. The misery that has engulfed you will dissipate and things will improve. And we're assuming that the reasons why these leaders have now chosen to bunch together is for our benefit. And it's a pertinent question. Is it really ever for our benefit?
And while at it, as well, there has been a story around all these formations that have been there. Now that all these leaders are coming together, what happens to the story that they coined for them to get to where they are?
The story?
The story behind, there's always a story that appeases your followers. So as they come together and college together, does that change the rhetoric that they've been championing?
We are always working to perfect our union.
Which one?
And,
Which one?
The Kenya experiment.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that among other factors that bring people together, regional politics bring people together. The assumption that is their benefit accruing, look at it this way: we even if we think individually, we act collectively generally, and that is the Africa contribution to democracy. That we tend to act collectively. Is there benefit? People have compared maybe when there was coalition government with when there was none, and people sometimes allege that there was more prosperity, that there was more concentration on the noise. You see, when a government is threatened, they go to the survival mode. But when they are comfortable, then they can make very hard decisions. And it is in making those hard decisions that economy change. It is in making those hard decisions that really the society can improve.
When you have a political leadership who, if we look at their history, have a commonality, or they have a lot more in common than most people realize. So the rhetoric that they're against each other takes center stage, but it isn't the case. Because if you look carefully, and this one is not even scratching the surface, just casual observation, many of these individuals have some very questionable relationship with state resources. They have done something to it that they shouldn't have done. And when one looks at their wealth, sometimes that wealth is related to this relationship I'm referring to with state resources. Resources that were intended for the citizenry and never really quite gets there. So then this begs the question, is the understanding, as you say, an understanding that has arrived at where the protection mode and the survival mode now kicks in. Not the mode that one would desire, where for once we are now going to do something that will ultimately benefit the citizenry. Because if it's in protection mode, if it's in survival mode, then the likelihood of the conversation of the citizenry taking center stage is null and void.
But this constitution has been tested before. I think the politics is where maybe reality is. We have the ideal in the constitution, and there is the gap, and we must always fight that gap is not big between the ideal we have in the constitution, and this constitution can bite, and the politics. And therefore, even as they do politics and they politic because they are politician, it is not a blank check. It is a game that is seriously regulated by the constitution, that defines here and there, that have set devolution, that defines what goes to the county, that give us the minimum human rights and dignity, and they are well spelled, that elevate our social and economic rights to a level that they must be granted. And therefore, it would have been a sorry state if we are talking in a vacuum, but we are talking of the politician and doing politicking, but I think they're doing it within the context of what we have come to call the transformative 2010 constitution, that have also tampered with some of those powers, have brought in new players, like independent institutions, like commissions, like the judiciary, and therefore it's not a blank check.
So
there's political hygiene to some extent.
When one looks at the activities, not listening to the words of political individuals who have some form of leadership, and when we look at the actions, which in many instances appear to be a constant attempt to twist and turn the constitution to suit their needs.
Right.
Yes.
Where's the hygiene?
Let the constitution be tested. The U.S. Constitution even went through civil war. The constitution is a bulwark towards that, because the constitution anticipated. Remember, we didn't come with the constitution in a vacuum. We had seen Moi. We had seen Kenyatta. We had seen the 37 amendments that brought one single party that turned everything and made us worse from the Lancaster Constitution. And therefore, if the Constitution is not strong enough, then that is not a constitution. So the constitution anticipated that, and that is why, remember, at some point, President Kenyatta actually asked the Chief Justice Mutunga, "Are you saying I'm a footnote?" And Justice Mutunga told him, "Then you have understood this constitution. If you fail, like you are almost powerless." Yeah. Because that was the very innovation, that is the engineering that the constitution did. So constitution is not a school project that is graded and it's at discretion. The constitution is actually meant to look at those politics, including the politics of resources distribution.
So you're actually saying that the constitution is not an inanimate object. You're saying that it is alive and well and kicking and running and breathing.
And probably more of that. But of course, I also understand that there is an aspect of charisma as a source of constitution. So that we saw a situation where with the handshake, ministers were reporting to Upper Hill, and you wonder, where is that in the constitution? So yes, there is the reality that even with that constitution, there is the unwritten constitution that is almost equally powerful. And Okoh described charisma as a source of constitution. If I have supporters, many enough, strong enough, then I can pull things my way, and that comes, the usual chorus. How come Baba Prime Minister is in almost every government in a meaningful way? That talks of our reality, that yes, we are always working to perfect our union. And there is the written constitution, and then there is the constitution in the heart and the spirit of the people. That, just because you won election with 48% does not mean this 54% are going to, by 54%, 52% does not mean the 48% are going to sit on their hands. They must also be actively involved in governance. And therefore you are seeing new terminology which are not just lip service, like the broad-based government, ACA, they're bringing Kenyans together.
ACA handshake. We are looking at the politics of the country. Dr. Duncan Ojwang is our guest this morning. Dr. is saying, we are seeing our politics, but it's still within the controlled confines of the Constitution. Okay, but is it people-centered? Is it for the benefit of the people, really? Or is it for the benefit of those who are playing and those few individuals who are set to benefit? I keep arguing. There are few people who are in the room. And every 5 years, those few people who are in the room keep struggling or fighting or battling for who gets control of the remote. So all of them are going to watch TV. But the one who's holding the remote decides which channel they're going to watch. Mm-hmm. But all of them are going to watch the TV. And every 5 years, they're just battling. And it's who gets control of the remote. And what we are seeing now, President Ruto talking to Raila Odinga, talking to Uhuru Kenyatta, maybe they'll talk to Kalonzo Musyoka at some point. They've had conversations, of course, with Musalia Mudavadi. They're all in the same room. They are discussing how to watch the TV, but are they thinking about those of us who are outside the room? And whether we also would like to see just a bit of TV, open the window at least to an Equadirisha. Where are the people?
Well, the analogy of sneaking in the village and watching TV in neighbor's yard might not resonate with most of this Gen Z. But be as it may, Article 38 talks of the right to form a political party, to run for office, and to vote. That right is given to every Kenyan. Yeah? And that is the premise that we start from. That every Kenyan, of course, albeit some qualification, can run for any office, including president. I saw your very good interview with Omtata, I hear, and to vote. And that requires to move from maybe being victims or bemoaning things to being proactive. If we feel those actors need more additional actors, you get in. And that invitation is given none by the Constitution. Secondly, and that become the reality that we have a choice to vote, we have a choice to run, we have a choice to even form a political party. And that's a right given by Constitution. But the Constitution also have done something unique, because the Constitution, by requiring 50 plus 1, have forced, and that was the innovation, have forced that there will be coalitions. That before was not there. We could see President Moi winning with 34% or 32%. Basically, when you have a large bloc, you can barely make it, but you can still be the president. And so the Constitution conscientiously force working across regions, that now everyone knows. Isn't it interesting that no one, even the people talking of Mlima, are only talking of it in terms of we are going to find a new coalition. And that idea of coalition and working together has become part of our vocabulary, courtesy of the innovation of the Constitution that raised the threshold of winning the election. And so I don't know to what extent, if someone work and pull more than 50% of voters, I think legally that person will have done something right, whichever way. But I also think that that is not a lazy figure. Getting there means you'll have pulled quite a number of actors, quite a number of voters your way. Now, if we work backward then, you realize that with that, we have cured some of the bad behavior where people can vote for someone for no good reason. Now, if more than 50% of the population decide to vote for you for no good reason, then there is a good reason why they are voting for you. So I'm not so much worried about the musical chairs, because I think there is the guarantee that for you to convince a half of voters,
you must talk to others.
You must talk to others. You must work with them, and you must have an agenda.
I agree. And my observation then is that those that have previously thought that they are the only ones who could be in the room, that they are the only ones who could just argue for the TV, are now worried that there are more people at the door, and those people at the door are coming in. And therefore, the battle for the TV will have more actors and players who are big and strong, like Duncan Ojwang, physically, right? And so they are coming together and saying, let's try and remove the seats from the table. Let's try and sit on the table on all these chairs so that we can be the only ones who have the chairs available. Let's try and see whether we can shorten the length of the song. So by the time the musical chair songs ends, we already know at what point we are stopping. Trying to play that game. What we are seeing is panic.
Panic
By the status quo. That the status quo can smell. The Lilian Vonini. Yes.
But why can't the non-status quo act? You see,
the non-status quo are acting, and that is why the status quo is panicking, because they can see the Dalili Mvua.
You know, that's why I was giving you the analogy that waiting for the hand to fall never work in this century. The hyena must be more proactive.
In which century did it work in?
Maybe it's kept our ancestors busy.
It's a figure of speech.
Right. Right. Yes. But you know,
it has worked before.
It probably
I'm
did.
agreeing with everything you're saying.
Otherwise,
today,
why? Right.
It has worked before.
That's why it became a wise saying.
That previously, those who have been in the room have known that those outside are only waiting for the hand to fall. But we know we are not going to drop this hand. We will keep, throwing
dangling
the hand.
it.
We will keep dangling the hand, and all we're doing is just passing it amongst ourselves. All right?
And therefore,
now they are seeing that the guys outside are coming for the hand.
Right.
And they are coming together. They will meet. They will meet in Karen, in Gatondo. They will meet in Seikuru. They will meet in West. They will meet. But sure, it's because they are seeing there's an emerging force and this force is coming for the hand.
That there is a threat.
Yes.
Yeah, which is okay. But you see, that always come from a perspective of subservient. We did that even when we were doing the analysis of race, relation, and discrimination. We found ourselves going to South Africa almost every year asking, how are white people treating us? And we said, we don't want this. We cannot be meeting here every year, bemoaning and discussing how we are treated as minority races in the world. Or what is, because as long as the treating is them, we are very helpless, and all we can do is describe how they are treating us. Oh my goodness, those are bad incidents. And so we say, no, let us either be proactive, we either also treat them badly, or we stop this. Now, that aspect of there are people in the room, and all we discuss is, how are they treating us? It's not born by the Article 38 that say that we should be bold enough to start parties, to vote, and to even run. But even beyond that, it means there's something they're doing right. And it means that we also have some limitation that we have recognized. And therefore, consider it this way. The amount of selective hate that was poured towards Raila when he said he wanted dialogue. This is a 70-year-old, 75, who have run, who have done his best, who have decided that this is the direction I want. And the amount of the keyboard warriors and the ability and the goosebumps to be offended on their own skin. How dare you? It shows us that we have less leaders and more followers. And that is the reality in the world, that very few people will say, I want to do this. Most people will want to follow. So yes, as a follower, you can be offended, but I don't see more people rising. And that's why I was saying, those who thought that maybe the window will be, things are so bad, people are so annoyed, that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who runs. I will get this in silver platter. Probably need to go back to the drawing board and discover that in reality, that might not be what propels you to power. You must be more proactive and do a little more, so that you cannot run it as a civil society project. You have to convince real people in the villages with real interest. You must talk to that fisherman why you think you can serve his interest better than Raila, who probably understand fishing. You must do a little more than simply do exchange papers here and there. And that is not easy.
You know, Doc, there's a Russian writer, classical Russian literature called Leo Tolstoy. Something he said, and I want to read it, because it in my mind, it encapsulates what you've said and then some. I sit on a man's back, choking him and making him carry me, and yet assure myself and others that I am very sorry for him and wish to ease his lot by all possible means, except getting off his back.
Yeah. After 40, I cannot live my life on bumper stickers.
Yes.
And sloganeering.
Yes.
I have to be practical. I have to be that person on people's back, if that is what it means. I cannot be the person reading on, when will you get off my back? If you read the pedagogy of the oppressed, there is no slave without master. And
there's no master without a slave.
Without master, without a slave. But when you read even Booker T. Washington account on when the Supreme Court proclaimed that slavery is illegal in the U.S.
Abolished.
Abolished. That night, as a young man, the slaves did not sleep. Do you know what they were doing? Discussing whether to accept to be free or continue in slavery. And they debated whether they want to be free or not until 4 a.m. They went to the master and said, Master, us, we still want to be your slaves. So, this constitution has emancipated people. People are emancipated, and we must do more than changing slogans and bumper sticker to actual action. But I don't see it. All I see is people are angry. So what?
Dr. Emancipation is not a constant.
Okay.
It is something that has to be continuously sought after.
Oh, true.
Because if it was, at independence, everything should have changed. It didn't.
Yeah.
2010, the promulgation of a new constitution, everything should have changed. It didn't. In fact, every time we make a move that is fundamental and seismic in terms of its effects, actually the hard work, the heavy lifting has actually just begun.
Oh, yeah.
The period of ease hasn't begun. It's the heavy lifting. Yes. Now,
You are very right.
when I look at the musical chairs that are being played, it speaks to me and it tells me that those who have held positions of authority and who have been in that position that we refer to as political leadership may not be in touch with the reality of our times. Because if your answer to the problems of the nation is musical chairs, and Eric put it beautifully and eloquently, if it's just changing the chairs so the few of you can decide who has what's
The remote.
that joystick? Yes, it's called a remote. Okay? Then you haven't actually understood what is happening. And it is lamentable because it means that even when you spoke and said the things that you wanted to do for the citizenry, not only did you not have any intention, you probably had no clue what it is you're talking about. Because if you had, then you would understand that the moment that is upon us is not one for, again to use the term, sloganeering. It's not for doing the things you've done before to get to what you want. No, this is a time for change. And either you take the step to make the changes possible, in which case you may actually achieve what you want, or that change will overwhelm you. There isn't much of a choice here. And that window keeps closing with every passing day.
Yeah. But with that reality, we also have to collect ourselves together and face a more external threat, which is that the power play is bigger. The powerful still determine whether directly or indirectly, those big countries, the rules. And therefore, if we consume ourselves, so we must have two conversations. We must have that internal conversation, but we must also have the external conversation where there's real threat. And you know, when I look at the opportunity in Africa, that Africa only receives 0.7% of the U.S. foreign aid. When I look at the trade and the amount of money in Africa, it is possible that I can say one thing, but in reality, the COVID effect is still being experienced up to now. Remember all those stimulus we did in COVID and talked about? The effect, tragedy have a long, enduring and lingering effect. The COVID effect is being seen. The war in Ukraine effect is being seen. And therefore, to what extent that could you be exact in a moving target, in a world that there is more danger and it is polarized and there is a lot of threat. So that your promises could be exact or approximated, because there is other reality that are not in your hands. For example, the COVID effect in the US forced the US dollar to go in Kenya up to what, 170s?
Yeah.
Because the US, after recovering the COVID, they started stabilizing their dollar. That is not anticipated. You thought with a dollar of 100 or 110. Now it is 170. Those are effects that are beyond you. But maybe you still should do a better job explaining. But that's the reality. The dollar was 170 thanks to the COVID.
You know, having you here, Dr. perhaps points to the problem that we actually have, and a really endearing one.
How can I be the solution and the problem also?
No. Having you here as an example is what I should have said. And why I say this is because, you see, the knowledge base that Kenyans have is envied by many other people, many people. But putting it to use so that it actually does what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
That is a constant gap.
The winds of change are here, Daktari. People are no longer complaining and saying, let's go to South Africa and ask ourselves, how are we being treated by the whites? They have had that conversation.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And the white man is now meeting all over and trying to cover a space for each other.
Yeah.
And do a cabinet slot here and a cabinet slot there. Because the black man has woken up.
Yeah.
Pass on the message. Thank you very much, Dr. Duncan Ojwang, for joining us for this conversation. Keep it here for more. Remember, as we keep saying, it's about how we hold conversations that keep driving the nation forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your